Okay, but welcome to that episode. This is Stephanie's hosting. I'm just introducing, and then she's gonna ask me a bunch of questions that I have prepared very much for, and know all the answers to. Hopefully, it's like a little exam in what I know about strategy and design, and it's a lightning rounds with a bit of discussion, I think. So, without further ado, I guess the scene is yours for the question.
Okay, so I have few questions. The objective is to answer the main question, which is design for SaaS a waste of money? But we will go in like more specific questions.
Okay.
Okay, so first I will just tell you some statements, and you will say me what you think.
Okay.
Like in a quick way. So when you build for SaaS, do you always design, even if you don't want to?
I would say it was true and false, right?
Yes, but you can be a bit specific.
Okay, sure. Well, I would say yes, but also like design comes with a lot of good things that will speed up other processes. So I think not doing it early means that you will spend more time doing other things like developing and marketing and sales and everything around it. Design will speed that process up, but I also do recognize that even some of our earlier clients, for them, just if design is not in the budget, then finding like a good UI kit or finding something that's already really well designed that they can kind of build their software on early would be a good foundation. But then later to have a designer come in, and maybe clean up some of the workflows and the general user experience, maybe the UI, maybe the branding.
Okay.
So it depends.
Okay, because my next question is, can you skip the design in the early stage?
Well, then yes, I suppose so. Like we see that happen all the time. Some companies are very successful regardless. There is a lot of cleanup work later when we then arrive and need to help them, and that's more of technical reasons because we then need to redesign things or there's a lot of technical debt. So if you just consult maybe with somebody who knows something about good design, accessibility, and whatever you have in this area of design before you maybe start developing something from scratch or choosing the wrong component library or design system, then I think, yes, I guess you could skip that process initially. But at some point, things are not going to feel cohesive. And in some instances, you will be building a bit too much of something over here where you maybe shouldn't have. And design could obviously have helped you a bit with that, making it a bit sharper and more concise. And then obviously the thing we usually see is general visuals, like the branding, the perception of quality kind of get lost sometimes when we're building fast. So that's a lot of the stuff we help with, at least initially with startups who've just gone into development without design.
Okay.
So yes, true.
Okay, interesting. There is another statement with hiring a design studio means giving up control. This sounds like a common
Perception of
yes for SaaS team.
Yeah.
But what's your take?
No, that's true. We hear that a lot. At least the people who either want to keep everything. Well, the common conception is that when you outsource something in your small team and you're building something very exciting, you lose that understanding of what you're trying to do, or maybe documentation, or maybe you'll cut ties with the people you work with at some point, and then you'll have a lot of knowledge just saved over here that you do not have access to. But the general I think is a misconception, depending on who you're working with, obviously, because studios and agencies and freelancers do it differently. But if you find a good studio, good agency, or a good freelancer, they will have processes like simple, pragmatic things like a shared Figma space. Maybe you own the Figma space, so everything that happens in the design phase kind of stays in your space, so it's yours. And then you have also like good designers like you, who are very good at annotating or documenting and like kind of making sure that all the knowledge you have around the design is it stays in Figma, for example. So they always have it, regardless of of you being the designer, or they're hiring a different studio. So I think that's a misconception in general. And also the way of working, we work very closely with our clients and our clients' developers and different people in the organization. So we always have this communication back and forth and discussions. So there's a lot of people in the organization we work with that have the same kind of knowledge, or like, why did we do that 3 months ago? Well, that's because Stephanie said this, and so I think that's a misconception, and it's a shame. It's holding some people back.
Okay.
So false, big false.
Yes. My next question is, studios only do surface level work. So I think that you already a bit replied, but like, what's the difference between internal designers and hiring a design studio?
I mean, I think at least back in the day, I don't really have that issue too much anymore. But hiring a studio is maybe more like a big agency who have a lot of people. You don't really know what's happening like behind the scenes. You get told there is some certain price tag on doing this work, and then you shove it over to them, and they do the project management, and they have their designers, and sometimes you hear stories about maybe less well executed work, or work being done by people with less experience that you maybe imagined. So it becomes quite surface level. But I think, at least with the way we work, we are so embedded into the teams we work with that it's not possible for us to do surface level work, because we are in there, we're speaking with their end customers, and we're doing the work like side by side with the developers or the marketing, or the CEO, whoever it is. So sure, you can find that in studios and agencies, but there are a lot of good people making a lot of good stuff in that space. So I would say sure, but in general, I would say false.
Okay.
People
So it's more working side by side.
I think so. Like, yes, people are generally also very proud of their work, and they want to do a good thing. So if you work with specialized people who have good experience in certain industries or working with special technologies, they also just have certain skill set that it's not really possible for them to do service level work because they just can't get themselves to do it. Or I don't know. It also depends on the person and the organization. But I want to say false in general.
Okay, I agree with that.
Good.
You don't need to redesign everything to improve the UX.
True. Big true. I'm a big fan of incremental changes continuously. And that could mean we design a small feature here, as opposed to making like a big bang. And then we improve that continuously over the next few months. Ideally, if we can involve some users in that process, that would be great. Get some feedback early. But with the nature of the software we usually design, which is very business critical, is very regular people going to their place of work and using the software, them having like these incremental improvements to their daily workflows of doing something in a complex system would mean a lot to them. And us listening as designers to that process, like looking them over the shoulder and see how they work for a few hours, will give us a lot of insights in how we can improve the experience and make them more efficient at their job. So I think continuously small improvements on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, gives happier clients, happier end users, as opposed to a big redesign. Because usually we see that from our own daily lives, when Spotify makes a huge change in their UI, or Figma does something, changes the whole UI, which they did recently. There's a lot of pushback, and people don't like change in general. So if we can kind of hide that in incremental changes, that also helps us. So I think it's just strategic too. It's less risk, because making big things usually comes with bigger risk, both in time and resources, but also, or maybe we built the wrong thing, or maybe nobody want to use it, or they didn't need it. So it comes with a lot of risk and bad things. I think these big redesigns.
So incremental changes is safer.
I would say so. Safer. I would say it's usually better for the end user too. And it gives you a chance as a SaaS company to kind of iterate quicker, get feedback faster. I think it's overall better experience for everybody.
Okay. So now that you talk about speed, faster, if you have to choose between design and speed, you have to pick one. What will you choose?
Is there any context to that in terms of like the space? Because I would say if I'm in a health tech industry, for example, I would always go design over speed because there's just so many things that needs to work and everything just needs to be perfect. Same with compliance or IDs, finance too. Like there's no room for error. There's no room for bad experience or misunderstandings. And in health tech, as you know, there are a lot of accessibility issues that we need to get like out of the way and make sure we know what we're doing when we present this to the end user at the end. So building something that fast and then maybe breaking something is not really a viable solution. But sure, there are certain industries or maybe more like the context of the product you're building, the SaaS, where speed makes sense, I think. Like if you want to figure out what you're building is the right thing to build as a SaaS, money is tight, resources are not huge. I think building something quickly, using a UI kit, for example, to kind of spare on the design resources to get something out there and get feedback, get people to use it, see if you have some sort of product market fit. I think that's the thing. In that case, speed is preferred as opposed to designing something perfect for a long time and then figuring out it was a waste of time.
Okay.
But it depends.
Depends of the context.
I would say so.
Okay, because there is also something else about tests. Like with design, you can test your idea in like hours.
Right.
Because it's easier.
Exactly.
But with code, it needs weeks.
It takes longer.
Yes.
Especially if you want to do it right too. Like if you don't want to, you want to think ahead in terms of your technical implementation and not just build something right here that works now. Things just take time. So you being able to make a prototype, show it off to stakeholders, potentially end users, it's just way quicker than from a resource perspective than building something. Especially if you figure out it's the wrong thing.
Yes.
And it's a no-brainer, really.
It's tricky.
Yes.
And what do you think about the statement, just ship it?
I do actually kind of like that to an extent because we have a tendency in general to, and I know that from myself too, that you want it to be perfect. You want it to be the best possible version because you're going to either just for personal vanity, like pride, but also, of course, the end user should have a great experience. You want to make sure everything is correct the way it should be. But I think most of us know that we tend to stay in this, just one more thing, or let me just fix this, or let me just improve this. We stay in that cycle for way too long, generally speaking. So if you're in a space where it's kind of safe to ship something that might have a little kink over here, or where the UI might not be like ideal, or the UX could be a bit better, I think shipping it is the way to go, and then getting feedback. And if you have this general feedback culture with your clients and customers and loyal customers, getting it out in their hands should ideally give them some sort of improvement in their day-to-day anyway. But then you could get that feedback even quicker and improve it, as long as they know. Like, if you have good customers who understand that you're building something for them and they're very happy, they're usually okay with like a weird technical error message over here, or like they're okay with that in general, in my experience. But honestly, obviously you can't have that happen all the time. There needs to be a level of quality to keep people happy, but shipping is good.
Okay, for some features.
Yes.
Okay.
I think in most cases you would say ship it.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Okay, interesting. I wanted to discuss with you about one specific thing. We can talk about strategic design. What do you think it means in SaaS?
Strategic design. I think being strategic in general is a very like C-level mindset of let's make a product strategy, like let's make a marketing strategy, let's make a sales strategy. We have all these strategies, and sometimes the design strategy, the product design experience, sort of customer journey strategy is kind of neglected sometimes. That wasn't your question, but I think for strategy in that space, it's like figuring out what you want to achieve. Like, what's the objective of what you're designing? What's the objective of the platform you're building? Seeing it from the customer's perspective, the end user's perspective, and kind of realizing what are their jobs to be done. Like, why are they buying into your software? Why are they using it every day? What are their success metrics? And kind of being strategic about internally as a SaaS, designing for that, cater to that experience to make sure that they have a successful experience. So that could be, it could be many things. The list is very long, but I think just in general, be mindful of the end goal of your users and how you can translate that into a customer journey in your software.
Okay. Because how do you think design can impact like long-term goals?
Like just general goals for a SaaS company?
Mm-hmm. Like, yes, business goal.
Revenue and
yes.
Yeah. Massively, I think. I'm obviously very biased, but I think design is one of those, similar to marketing and sales, how they can impact obviously revenue and bottom line and growth. I think design have that exact purpose and ability to do the same, but in a more, it's a bit more difficult, takes a bit longer, but the end result of that is also a lot of other things like happy clients or lower churn, or like it can do so many things long term if you really consider it from a strategic point of view. Churn is a big thing in SaaS, obviously, that sure you want people in, you want them through your onboarding flow, and you want them to at some point convert to a paying customer if that's not initially. But then having, like, retaining them and making sure they stay for a long time, becoming a returning daily user, as we talk about a lot, is a tricky thing. But that's all about providing value, and value comes through features, but it also comes from not having a sucky experience, like having a great user experience, having it be intuitive, having it be performant. All of these things ties into, can our users, our paying users, staying, or are they converting to become paying users? And if you have a good chunk of people where UX design, a bit of good onboarding, making that a bit intuitive, more intuitive, or just having it in general, can convert people to take up their credit card and pay for something, that obviously translates directly to your bottom line. And then it's all about having them stay through various ways of, there's so many ways to do that. I think that's for another discussion, but
Okay.
yes, it has a huge impact if you use it right.
Okay.
On long-term goals.
Interesting. And if we talk about like design systems specifically, do you have some like a bad example of like maybe a company or like one of the projects that you did, who like with a lack of design system like can impact like really in long-term impact?
Right. I mean, the general sentiment around design systems is obviously that they provide long-term impact, and we talk about that all the time with the return of investment on the design system. So a design system is obviously very expensive to set up. It's very practical, and there's a lot of things that needs to be done, a lot of design work, a lot of implementation work. But having that design system in the long run should ideally, and there's a lot of stats on this, but the return of investment on being quicker to produce new designs, like innovating in your product space and testing things and shipping them, and then building them, like developers becoming more efficient because you have a design system. And also just faster collaboration between design and development. That's like general things we see. So I think just in general, not having a design system will kind of limit a lot of that, because there is a lot of rethinking simple things every time, and there's a lot of inconsistencies in the software you're producing, and it just makes life harder for a big development team to kind of stay in sync and create an experience with or without designers that makes for a great user experience. And if you don't have a great user experience, you typically see people churning, and that means less money in the bank. And so there's a lot of good things to be said in general about design system. I don't really have an actual example, because I don't think that's something people talk too much about. I don't think they like talking about the negative effect of not having something like that. But I have a lot of other bad examples of UX in general. But for design systems, Not really. I just know the fundamentals of what they do.
Okay,
Not bad examples.
not bad examples.
Not actual real bad examples.
Okay. So I would like also to ask you like some really quick question
Okay.
where you have to really answer quickly, like one sentence.
Okay. I'll try. It's difficult,
Yes.
but I'll try.
What is one SaaS UI trend you secretly hate?
Oh. White labeling. I think I secretly hate white labeling. It's just, I can't say more than in one sentence. I think white labeling because depending on how it's executed, I think we do it quite well. But usually you see a lot of changes in a piece of software to an extent where it doesn't really, it creates a worse user experience sometimes.
Okay.
And white labeling is obviously a big company says, I want my logo on it, I want my colors on it. And there's practical issues with that and technical issues. And then obviously just the visual and accessibility issues. And
it takes time to
it
make
takes time.
it properly.
That too, yes.
Yes.
It's just a maintenance issue. It's just, yes.
MVP design. Overrate it or keep it simple?
Well, I think the nature of an MVP is keeping it simple, I guess. But the MVP, if you understand what MVP means, I think is a good way to go.
Okay.
But most people don't. They're not building MVPs.
Want to add more and more and more.
It's not an MVP, no.
Okay.
But yes, MVP is great.
Okay. If a SaaS team only has a budget for one thing design-wise, what should they prioritize?
One thing design-wise. If they only have... Well, if it's in terms of like tangible things in the software, I would say onboarding. Like a solid onboarding experience, making sure that the users can sign on their own in most cases. If not, trying to tie in that enterprise onboarding in a good way in the product. If they can't do it themselves from a landing page. But onboarding is usually the way we see most people. There's still huge churn maybe if the experience is bad, but just getting them in there is usually the most difficult part.
Okay.
That hinders usually, that stands in the way of growth. So I think onboarding, good onboarding.
Okay, good onboarding. One thing you wish every SaaS founder understand about design?
That it's a strategic part of the overall business strategy. It has just as much weight as the traditional things like sales and marketing. And in some instances, I would say it's even more important.
Why is it more important?
Short questions, short answers. Well, for the reasons I said before too, with it can help with growth. It can help with revenue. It can streamline your organization. It can create a better and more beautiful user experience, happier clients. It can do so many things. Marketing and sales can do some of that, but a good user experience is also marketing. So, like word of mouth. So I think everything is important, but design, especially if you haven't really had a strong look at it from a strategic perspective, you should definitely do that, and then you can say no, it's not for us right now. But usually they just don't look at it until too late.
Okay. Okay. Next one. Design is never done. Agree or eye roll?
Or eye roll, yes. Well, I guess it's never done, but the foundation. If you do a good job with, we talked about design systems. If you're good at building internally a very mature organization from a design perspective, you will have a solid foundation. That will mean that you'll have so much done. There's a lot of then reusing and sometimes extending on things you already have, like components in your UI. But generally speaking, it's never done because you want to innovate and create new features. But the foundations, the streamlining the UI, all of these things, having a great user experience, can be kind of set into some sort of somewhat flexible, but in a box with a design system. And then if you're building something quite extraordinary or conceptually very different than everything else, then yes, it's never done. You need to think new things, new thoughts.
Okay.
So no.
No eye roll.
Yeah, I guess it's never done.
Okay. If you could cancel one UI element forever, what would it be?
The cookie consent box. Is that possible? Can I choose that?
Y-
I don't like the cookie consent box. Pop-ups. I don't know. Things that gets in my way when I didn't trigger anything.
Okay. Like
So-
when it's annoying on it because in front of
This.
everything else.
And the cookie bug. Well, it's quite common now, so it's kind of just instinct to click on one of the buttons, but that's bad user experience. It's just annoying. Bad first impression.
That's true.
So get rid of that.
Okay. And to finish, one dream project you would drop everything for.
Well, I think I'm very boring in that department because, like, I really like the very technical and nerdy and very niche work we do for some clients, like in telecommunication or prop tech or fintech. So I guess for me, it's still like a project that is very business critical for the people who use it, has a lot of users, like a ton of users, active users, so we can really make an impact. And then in an industry that is very conservative or haven't seen much innovation recently, like fintech or maybe even, well, medtech. I really like medtech in general and robotics, because it comes with so many restrictions and out of the box thinking, because the scenario or the context of the room and like everything affects the software. And usually there's also some hardware connected to it. So I really love designing experiences that has that hardware element to the software that you're using. Oh, I know. Dashboard in a car, like the driving experience of the UI. That I would love. Yes. That's my answer.
Okay. Quick answer.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, it's really interesting because you also have to think about which interaction
Yes.
has to be like when you're driving.
For sure.
So
Yes.
a lot of tests can be done.
Absolutely. Yes, a lot. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, getting that thing right is very crucial. Sometimes a matter of life and death when you're driving a car.
Yes.
So that I like.
Okay.
Was that it?
Yes. Thank you for all your answer.
You're welcome. That was fun. Thanks to Stephanie for a very nice chat. Some very interesting questions she prepared. I know Philippa was part of that process too. It was very fun for me to not know the questions. I hope my opinion about design and strategy came across the way it should. I do think, just to reiterate, that if you're not using design strategically, you are making some sort of mistake. Like, you need to be aware of it, and you need to treat it as one of the more powerful tools you have when you're building software and trying to differentiate yourself, or just retain the customers or gain new customers in whatever space you're in. So I hope that came across very, very clear. As a very strong opinion, I know that, but we've seen it so many times, and in general, if anything needs elaboration from some of the answers I gave, because some of it was a bit quick fire and not a lot of time to think, I would love to have that chat too. I think some of the things I said, probably not controversial, but some of the things might need a bit of clarity. So let me know if you disagree or are interested in any of my points. Anyway, and this is unlikely the last time we're going to talk about strategy in relationship to or in relation with the work we do in general. Design for software, design for websites, branding, you name it. Strategy is the key driver for all of this, because that's why we're doing it. We're trying to be strategic around our presence. So if you enjoyed this, please let us know and follow Focus State here on Spotify or wherever you're listening to the episode. And yes, again, thank you Stephanie for some great questions, and see you next time.